Yes. Do your introduction.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. So what we're doing with the Way of the DAO is we're providing guidance for communities and leading them through the process of going from community into DAO. And we do that through workshops, working with communities, getting really hands-on, and really kind of helping communities structure their thoughts in the best way and their communities in the best way. A little bit about me is I came from the world of Washington. I'm from the US originally. I left that. My first job was actually in the office of Congressman Brad Sherman, the one that hates crypto, if you know that guy, which is a bit ironic. Then I was on K Street for a while, and then I started traveling and got into the development world. I eventually ended up at a project called Hive Online that uses blockchain for financial inclusion in sub-Saharan Africa. And while I was working at that project, if you look at the way the village savings and loan communities are structured, they meet up every 2 weeks, they pool their money in a shared treasury, and they issue loans out to each other. And it's entirely reputation based as well. So if you take that structure, it's pretty much the same as a DAO. So I got really inspired how community finance was working throughout Africa, and realized that it's much bigger than just women's savings group. DAOs and this new structure that is being enabled by blockchain technology is really just going to be the next thing and everywhere. So that's how I got attracted to the Way of the DAO, and that's why I love DAO so much and see their huge potential. So I'll let the guys also do an introduction.
I can go next.
Yes, sure.
So my name is Niklas, and I've been in the space for quite some time. I started back in 2013, where I wrote a report on a bachelor in distributed systems about Bitcoin and documentation for payment solution. Back then, there was not that much else, to be honest. Of course, then came the Ethereum ICO and like DAO hack, Mt. Gox and so on. So I've seen some of this stuff, but I only truly worked with it full time from 16. Before that, I did sort of app development, been an entrepreneur for the past 9 years. So I started working with multi-sided platforms. I got a business angel in around 16, and he was like, okay, you have to dive into like full-time blockchain. So back then in Scandinavia, there was not really any community. So I helped co-found a non-profit in this region, Nordic Blockchain, and we have done conferences. It was a lot about community building and conducting meetups and all of this. And then back in 2020, I moved to Switzerland to work with DeFi, doing that whole DeFi craze summer. And that was fun. Then Corona came, and I sort of moved back to Denmark. And I realized that a lot of my previous experience, if you take governance and add on top of it, you sort of get the multi-site platform, DeFi, community building. If you add the governance aspect on it and combine it, you sort of get what DAOs is all about. And I realized that it led up to that. So then I started working with DAOs for real during the past year of time. Also trying to see to what extent could you standardize all the processes needed. It's really hard to speak best practice here because there are not really anyone, but there is a recent practice that we can speak about, and there might be some patterns. And I think it's also important to mention my motivation for doing so. So I'm quite a spiritual person, and I realized that DAOs is all about helping people, making them do what they feel like, and they can do it anywhere in the world and get paid to do it. And when you do what you feel like and you can survive, you can actually feel more fulfilled as a person, and you can become more happy and more sort of awakened. And I think that's what it's all about, which is giving me a driver to do this as well. Mika?
Thank you. So my name is Mike, and I'm from Belarus originally. And my background is from theoretical physics. So I used to grow up and study and work as a scientist, but then I realized that our world is pretty not good place, right? And not because of the nature, but because of the humans. So there are a lot of things we should make. There are a lot of things we should change, a lot of things we should build from the ground. And in physics, not so much. So I decided to move to a field of innovation, blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data. Around 5 years ago, started to work as a consultant and then grew up to a solution architect with a focus on digital economy and governance. So for last 2 years, like even and a half, I'm solely working on my mission to make the world a better place. So my focus is social environmental impact. And I start to work with Aragon platform that is providing tools for DAOs as a researcher and now the ambassador there. And as well, I'm volunteering in an initiative in Belarus to build a grassroots digital state to empower civil society, like local people, to govern, to manage, and political agenda and economical and even like military agenda, but to make it grassroots, right? So like power back to people. And here in Simfios, yeah, I'm applying my skills to build good fair tokenomics and good fair governance, because I see the world, as Nicholas told you already, the world where people are equal and free to do whatever they want, to live whenever they want, and they still need to be organized in movements, communities with some goals and missions, you know, because this life will never stop and we have to solve new puzzles after the previous ones. So all these structures need organization, and here I'm building and researching and optimizing this governance organizations. Thank you.
Very cool indeed. So I'll go next. I'm conscious of how much time we have. So do we want everyone to do a quick hello? So the Bigger Pie clan as well. Would you like that?
You would appreciate it, yeah.
Yeah, just to get a feel of like everybody who's
Perfect.
come here, who wants to be part of the initiative, the community.
Cool. Okay, so I'll go first very quickly, and then Veronica, you got your camera on next, so it'll be over to you, and then we'll go around the screen. So I am Bridget Greenwood. I'm the founder of the Bigger Pie. I came into the space in 2017. I was excited. I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and I was excited about why Bitcoin had come about and what was failing in terms of, and then had to educate and learn, of course, what was wrong with the current monetary systems, and then seeing the different use cases that we could apply this technology to. The women in the space are phenomenal. There just aren't enough of them. And I think if we're actually going to build on this technology in a way that it is exciting, then we need to have everyone at the design development deployment table. And that definitely includes women. So yeah, so that's been my role, my chosen role since September 2019, is to make sure that we can support the women who are in the space, attract, retain, advance, fund, give a platform to, you know, make sure that there are role models for others to come through and follow. So that's where I am. Veronica was one of the first women in the space that I met, and she is absolutely a classic example of the women in the space. She's wonderfully educated, self-motivated, always helping others, a fantastic mentor, and I adore her. So Veronica.
Okay, thank you. Do I need to present myself after that? Okay. So at the base, I was a management consultant in IT and tech, projects across a variety of industry in London. Then in 2014, late 14, early 15, I discovered Bitcoin, went on to that, put some money. I did participate in the first DAO that was hacked. So then I went onto ICOs, onto cryptocurrency mining, onto cryptocurrency hedge fund, onto DeFi, NFTs, and whatever else is there. So whatever comes to you, I'm in. So there you go. Simple.
Fabulous. Günther, do you want to go next, because you have your video on already?
Sure, super quickly. So I am also a member of Bigger Pie that Bridget excellently runs, really new to Web3 space. So working with few projects, but essentially just trying to learn as much as I possibly can, as quickly as I can. Have a day job. So in my day job, I'm head of strategy for the Department for International Trade here in London. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And I'll pass on for ease to Sekai, because I can see the camera coming on.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I am also part of the Bigger Pie Sisterhood. Started my career as a management consultant, much like Veronica. In my day job, I work at HSBC and the digital bank in innovation and partnerships. I have side gigs in DeFi. I contribute to 2 DAOs, one very big one that's completely anonymous and has been quite an interesting experience to transition into. And the other one is very small and sounds very much like the model that you described earlier with the women in developing countries contributing and using it to buy supplies, sending their children to school. And yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of this and looking to learn and share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ellie, are you comfortable going next, darling? And then we'll come to you, Alex.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I joined the Bigger Pie group back in May 2020. So that's when I was basically in the space of blockchain a little bit before, but I really got delved into it once I joined the group and learned so much from wonderful women, and including Veronica. She helped me out a few times with some investments in crypto. That's kind of where my journey started, right around before the pandemic, but during the pandemic kind of picked up. And I'm really interested in learning more about DAOs. I've been doing a lot of research on my own, but really interested to see how the community, the Bigger Pie group, like we can, how we can develop a DAO strategy. And on my day job, just really focused on marketing and communications in various companies, mostly doing audiovisual production content.
Amazing, thank you, Alex. And hello, Alex.
Hey. I'll go next. Just a very brief intro. I've been with Bigger Pie for a little while. I've worked with the fabulous Bridget on a few other projects. My entry into Web3 comes from, I guess a little bit of a different angle. So I spent quite a long time with the world's largest expert network, which is a membership-based community of experts. By the time I left last year, they had 850,000 active members. And then you try to connect those members based on their expertise and experience and skill set for very specific, and in some cases quite niche, topics or tasks or pieces of work with a pretty large client base. We had over 1,000 clients. And so a lot of the work I ended up doing was very much focused on digital transformation. And I really got excited about Web3 because I went down the NFT rabbit hole. And I was like, oh, you can make money with JPEGs. But as I'm exploring more of it, I think the power of building a decentralized community is really interesting. And I'm excited to see how the different technologies around governance and tokens and other things like that can influence basically membership-based communities that I have experience with. And I think the inflection points that I'm interested in are around how do you strike a balance between being able to surprise and delight the community, but then at the same time still get stuff done when not everybody needs to see how the sausage is made. So, yeah.
Very cool indeed. So in terms of the Bigger Pie's history, as I say, we started in September 2019. It's just been a word of mouth. People see value and invite other women into it. So I'm just going to see if I can move. Hopefully, no, okay, I can't. And we have built up, which I think all of the women who are in the community can attest to, a culture of reciprocity. So when people come in, the first thing they say to me is, I can't believe how helpful everyone is. And also, I can't believe how knowledgeable everyone is. So I've tested various ways that we can support women throughout the 2.5 years, and I'd now like to formalize it. I'd like the community to be able to help me to do this, to strengthen the bigger pie. And also, as I've said to you before, Charlotte, I can have ideas of how I think that women can be supported, but actually the women themselves will know much better than me. So how can we have a system where it's much more easily for people to be able to raise whatever that might be, and then we can vote on it, and then anyone who wants to get their hands dirty, because people do get their hands, roll their hands up and get stuck in, we can do all of that in a way that people are rewarded and there's structure to it. Yeah, and the rewards also are non-financial, but definitely financial.
That makes it very clear.
No, so when I say non, I know, but a reward doesn't have to be just, I'm doing this for money. It can be for other gains and benefits, but I definitely want there to be a financial reward for putting in a decent amount of work.
Okay, Bridget, so just for me personally to understand, are you looking, to set up a social DAO, a grant type DAO, an investment DAO, what type?
Well, this is what this call is about, so we can look at what the different ideas are. I've got a list of about 15 projects that I want the bigger pie to be able to deploy. A number of those will make the bigger pie itself self-sustaining, so we can have that financial model. I'd like to be able to use grants to be able to kick it off so that people can start doing the work and get paid. We don't have to wait until we generate the financial returns on it. And what does that look like? That's why you guys are on the call, and that's why Charlotte's on the call, so they can help us to figure out what that looks like.
Okay.
I mean, let's see how we should proceed here, because of course we have a bunch of questions for you guys. It seems like you've been here for a long time. You started in 17 in this space. That's actually a long time. I think it was
19.
The bigger pie itself has been 2019. I've been in space
2019. Yeah. It's still a long time actually in the space, and you already have a community. Mm-hmm. And there's many ways of going by this, and I think what we need to understand is like, what is the direction? Because as far as I can understand, the bigger pie is a place where you get help, right? Like you come there and you help others, and it's not necessarily for financial gains. Yes, but that has to be sort of clarified. Whether like the dynamics, I still there are some things there, and I think one of the best things we can do, to be honest, is that we've built this DAO creation canvas.
Yeah, so Bridget and I we presented this at Ethereum Denver together. So I think from what I'm hearing, and I know I've talked in detail to Bridget about a number of the ideas in the community, that could be a really great place, I guess, for all of us to start, is to get the community together and start to answer these questions, not as individuals, but together in a workshop setting as a group. So we could, decide collectively as the bigger pie, what direction, what is the mandate, and then to start to build on the technology from what the group would like to do. So I imagine that would be where we would start, is just to have these kind of group calls, community calls, where we could start to discuss those things and that direction as a core group of the bigger pie that would like to really work and dive deep into the building of a DAO.
So
I just wanted to say one thing. So I know Bridget for a while now, and I've been here since the bigger pie started. So, I may not talk a lot on the group, but I'm close to it. Now, the thing is that this community started mainly to introduce more women into the space.
Yeah.
Okay. So it didn't start with a financial incentive. Then now it evolves, because you know, Bridget and I, we've seen people need different things. Okay, but ultimately it boils down to this. If we look at the composition of the group, yeah, of the community itself, you'll find, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bridget, but you will find that you have mainly women who need support, help, or women who can offer support and help themselves, but not necessarily financial.
Mhm.
So then this is why when at the beginning I asked what kind of DAO are we looking to make, as in, are we looking to build a community where people pair and help each other, just like you know, the other community that was discussed earlier here in the introduction? Are we looking at well, actually we're looking to attract investors so that we can help our own community, a bigger pie community, to raise funds and so on, and we do that through the form of a DAO. So I agree with Charlotte in terms of asking people what they want, but you will see that the answers will be
Wide and varied.
Yeah,
But
okay.
wide and varied.
But I think,
Yeah, all right.
you know, for us to go through the DAO creation and go that route, like a direction need to be sort of clarified a bit beforehand. So this is more like a brainstorm, and I think it might boil down to maybe a simple vote in terms like internally in the community, because
So can I share my screen?
Yeah, go
Because
for
the
it.
document that I shared with you with Charlotte, I haven't shared with the whole bigger pie. So I've had various conversations with people, but no one sat there and seen all the various projects that I'm talking about that I would like us to bring in to, excuse me, to fruition. So if I just share my screen now, and can you see this Word document? It's just literally a Word document. There's nothing fancy about it. And these projects, as I say, are in no particular order. But I would like us to do some sort of NFT raise to be able to inject some capital into the DAO, as well as looking for grants, and then using potentially, and this is just an idea that we're floating, and we'll figure that out more once we've been through workshops. And these NFTs would have some governance, so a way for members to be able to turn around and say, actually, this is how we can start to say what we'd like to focus on, where we'd like to focus on, and put votes towards that. Then there is a Zero to CTO program that I'm building with Gyan. There is a CO to CMO program, so that makes sure that we can attract senior women into the space and upskill them very quickly in the Web3, and then put them in executive and C-suite positions throughout Web3. Because without that positioning of senior women, we're just going to have men at the top making the same hiring decisions as they do elsewhere, which often doesn't work in women's favor. And then there is Zebu, which is a Web3 UK-based marketing agency that's happy to work with us to create the content for that. And then both of those projects, we're putting women into real work to build their CV up before they go and maybe get a job or whatever else they want to do. I want to make sure that we can do a version of what Amber and I are building in the 200 billion club, and that's making sure that female founders coming through can get the support they need and get the investment they need. How can we put more women on boards or as advisors for these startup companies? Should we put a Web3 database together that will also go with working with event organizers, so we can make it much easier for them to find us, to say we want some speakers and panelists and keynote people. And then we can have a conversation with event organizers to say, also, what about safe spaces for women? Have you considered, having groups beforehand so they can easily get to meet each other, and then physical spaces where they know they can go, just simple things that will make a big difference to women being able to show up. I've delivered one gender diversity workshop to Outlier Ventures. We already have that. Why don't we do more? And I can, share with others so they can also go off and deliver. To be able to place people into positions, then we can build a recruitment arm. I've got a friend of mine who I trust who's been running a recruitment business for the last 20 years in the financial services space, and she's brilliant at both looking after the people who come through and who are being placed and looking after the companies, so that would be great. We just need to finalize the last few people into the mastermind. Again, with Gyan, we're helping women to build a game on blockchain, so it's earn as you learn. I'd love to be able to have a career path that again potentially we can put on chain. So if you want to get to wherever it is in the future, then you're able to see the roadmap that everybody else took, and they can say what events they went to, what networks they were part of, what resources they use, as well as their education and their background, to be able to map out where they went to, and you can learn from that. Don't worry about them. I would love a team to be able to work on sponsorships. I've got this idea of cards against discrimination, which is a fun learning tool for people to understand the ways that discrimination happens and what you can do about it. I've already mentioned working with event organizers. People want us to do bigger pie retreats and events, and I need help with that. We need help with that. Grant applications and a proposal team. So when women say we were looking for funding, wouldn't it be great if we had a team of experts who could help them put it together and be successful in getting that funded? A more formalized mentoring program, making sure that women are put forward for awards. And then I would love us to have an award that we actually do once a year that highlights people working in the space, that is around inclusion and the fabulous women who are in it. And then also we have so much challenge in what we're doing, then the Bigger Pie should really be a place that people can come to look for consultants, either to help them to launch something, or when they're in the growth spurt and they don't necessarily want to hire full time, but they can tap into the collective brilliance that we have. So these are the things I would like to see us bring forward into the world, and they're in various stages of
in the making,
delivered. Yeah. So for me, it's like, can we use a DAO to be able to say, these are the various projects, we can decide who wants to work on what and put that forward.
So there's a lot, right? Like this is what I see. There's like a lot of paths, projects, let's call it working groups. Yep. Potential working groups. I think because there's so much, I think it's important to, like, I mean, I see they've been defined. I think there needs to be a prioritization there before any sort of execution on it. Is there some of the things that are more important than others? Have there been a consensus on this? Because I mean, it's clear that you wanna, I mean, this whole community wants to go different places, but it's just a lot, and I think it's sort of important to narrow it a little bit, the direction, and that's, I guess, is a talk that should be had based on of criteria and potential and all of this within the community itself,
so effectively, like I could do a write-up of each of them, where we're at and then what's required, and then people can raise their hands and say, I mean, I know it's a lot, but with 500 people in the group, you know, if we had 10 people working on each one, I don't see why we couldn't run those simultaneously. The whole point,
it is a possibility if the right incentive structures has been set up, and there is I mean, the first thing that needs to be clarified from my perspective is to what extent does this even have to be investable as a DAO, in terms of what is the whole, like, what is the values, what is it you actually want to do? And what I see is it's women empowerment, right? Like, it's primarily that it boils down to, and that as of this moment doesn't really have to be investable in terms of these initiatives, and it's, again, it boils down to what is it exactly you want to do, what is the underlying thing, and based on that, what is the direction, and not all DAOs or communities has to be for financial gains at all, actually. So, and I still feel like there is not a clear consensus yet about that point.
So all the activities that I just walked through, we've done on some degree, and they all are towards making sure that we have more women in the space, that they're supported, that they're visible, that other people have consideration of it, that those companies who say, I don't know how to attract more women to what we're doing, I'll give them solutions to. So all of it is towards just making sure that we are supporting the women who are in it and retaining more women in the space.
And it seems like a lot of the projects have already been implemented at least once or
Yes.
many times. And I think it's much easier to work with them once they've already been launched, and it seems as though they have been. So for that, maybe it's also not only the prioritization, but but also like kind of where the focus is and which ones have been the most successful at achieving the objectives, and which ones would be best for a DAO to take on, and which ones maybe not so much for that structure. But
Yeah.
I think for the next steps, Bridget, have you considered starting to do, because it's such an active group and so many ladies have showed up here, some community calls where the bigger pie could start to think about what they would like out of a DAO, and what they would like to focus on, and what are the time commitments of the members who would like to be a part of the core team on the early stages, and then maybe there would be a little bit, I guess, more clarity.
So
what exactly the DAO wants to look like.
So that's this first call is the first community call.
This is it. All right.
I've got
Yes.
I've got a form in those who have raised their hand to say they'd be interested, of which there's 28 people in there, to say what's your expertise, what's transferable, and how much can you commit to a week to it. So we are gathering that data.
Great.
Recording this so that those, because obviously the problem with having, the fantastic thing about having a global audience, global community, is that not one time zone is going to suit everyone. So we'll kind of have to stagger that.
Yeah, of course.
so that not everyone's on the live and not everyone's has to sit on the recording. So yeah, but I mean, I've done a lot of the talking here, which I don't want to be the case. I mean, thankfully, Veronica, because you've spoken up, but Alex, Shake and Ellie as well. Please, whatever your thoughts might be, can you dive in with them?
Yeah, I think these are a lot of good questions. I think the nice thing about the bigger pie is that we already have a pretty large community that seems to be attracting new people through referrals and other things. I think it's grown in like 100 people in the past few weeks, which is quite nice. So the last time I looked at the Telegram, I think we're well over 600 now. I think you're right. I think having working groups to attack these particular problems makes a lot of sense. And I think putting some infrastructure so that new members can understand like what existing members are already working on and make it easy to put their hand up, I think is good. So I think we'll probably want some working group focused on onboarding in that capacity. But I worry that at some point we may need to use a different tool than Telegram or something like that. Like it's just I just definitely need to do that. If we're going to vote on this stuff, we need a good mechanism to do that. But I think that certainly the value that I get out of it is that I feel like I'm in a community of like-minded people. I've certainly been helped by some of them. In fact, I have a couple of job offers thanks to people that I've met through the community, and was able to do like research on it because they'd also worked with that company, so it made me sound super smart. I've also helped others by making connections. So there's not necessarily like there is a financial incentive, but it's sort of a secondary incentive. Yeah. I think when it comes to doing recruitment and placements, I think that's a place that you could pretty easily monetize. But I think the main question, and I think is perfectly appropriate to start with, is like, what is our actual goal? What's our North Star? And I just worry that if we don't make it very easy for everyone so far to vote, even people who aren't as familiar with Web3, because frankly, that's a huge draw of like who maybe should be involved with this project, whether it's a DAO or you decide not to have it be strictly a DAO. I just feel like getting all of them to vote on something or express their opinion is going to be the challenge. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts around that kind of classic communal work.
May I comment? May I join the conversation? Thank you. So guys, what I heard is actually is a bigger pie. A lot of different projects, very cool projects, interesting. A bunch of them is really a bigger pie. So for me, I don't see any problem. The thing is, what we are doing a first step when we are entering the community and start to do our job, we are doing mapping, right? So we map the community members, we map the idea, if there is something. So we just find what is there inside of your community, even if it's just like first community call right now. it's still a community. So you still have there a lot of values. So we try to find them, and then we align them in a structure that you can continue to brainstorm, to work on the identity of the bigger pie, to work on the structures and etc., aligning them closer and closer. And that's why we call it the way of the DAO. This is the way. This is not the product that you buy and it's instantly here, right? So it's the process that you are going through, and we can help you with this and to guide you in this way. Yeah, so the structure that we can bring, reward structure and then governance structure, will be pretty simple, pretty simple, like for a community of smart people. That's it. And then what will come out of it depends only on you, on your community, and we will just help to make it simple, transparent, and accountable. That's it. And if it will be investable, I'm sure it will be investable. I have a strong intuition about it. Yeah, but if it will be investable, we'll make it investable. That's simple as that.
If it's a goal, yes, but sometimes it's not really the point by it. And I actually like what Alex said about money comes second. Like, and this is actually a thing that goes again in DAO. So I think that's important, that first you do what you're passionate about and feel like, and then money comes the next thing. And it's still important, but I also believe this can be funded in many ways. So it doesn't need to be sustainable, at least not initially. And I like the NFT raising. That's a good way of doing it for sure.
And just to be clear, because I realize I haven't expressed it, the culture of reciprocity that we spent 2.5 years building, I want that to remain in everything that we're doing. I just want to be able to ramp up our effectiveness and see these projects more formalized and out in the world with people who want to work on them being able to do so.
Makes sense.
Sakay, did you put your camera on? Did you want to say something? And then
yes, I did. I think we have a lot of wonderful things on the list there, Bridget. But having experienced DAO life, I think it would be good if we had maybe 1 or 2 focal points, just as a test, or maybe an MVP, and just to see how we all work in that. The DAOs do add something really important, being able to vote and democratizing everything. But there are some things that can get really frustrating that just, in my opinion, they just need to be centralized. So I think if we do the test, rather than, one person saying, I think, we should do this based on my experience, we should probably just all experience it together, and then just have an understanding of the things that, probably need to be centralized, and what can really flourish inside the DAO.
Yeah, it's a pretty normal way of doing it. Is you start centralized, at least you have a core team, and then you decentralize out gradually as you go. It's like a process, because everyone needs to be activated and built up and all of this. I have a question from like a male's perspective, because this is like a female community. That's at least how I see it at the moment. But is that correct? Because I see, based on what I have heard thus far, is that the values is women empowerment, because we all should be equal. And I completely get it as a Dane. This is like, it's probably like fairy tale land in this place. So I do get it, but to what an extent can men help further that value as well?
So that is a great question, and something that I definitely want us to be able to do. I want to keep the Telegram channel female only, or female stroke gender minority only, because the conversation that happens when you bring men into it, because we have the opportunity to see so many conversations with men in it, is very different to what we have. But if men want to roll their sleeves up and they have to be part of the solution, then perhaps that's something that the DAO can open up to. So we've always got the sacred space where we can talk as women, but then we can work. And then again, this is going to have to be a community driven thing. We spent 2.5 years making sure that it was a safe space for women. So again, I would like women to be able to turn around and say, in these instances, it would be great to be able to work with men, and in these instances, we'd like to keep our safe space.
All right, it's because I really like the values, what you guys are trying to do. I think it's super needed, especially in this field. But in the end, it boils down to, at least for me, a really good dynamic between the females and the males. That's where you get the magic. Right. So it's sort of so you need men as well. This is like the thing I want to point out. But I completely understand making a safe space and all of this, especially initially. It's like it's so needed. But maybe eventually it should be opened up for men as well. At least that's the input I have to it.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable, and I think like trying to determine when it makes sense to have a safe space versus when it makes sense to talk with like the broader community, I think is really valuable. One thing, I'm in Meta Gamma Delta DAO, which is another kind of like women's empowerment DAO, and even though the focus of that DAO isn't necessarily on the financial aspect, as part of pledging the DAO, you pledge, I think it's like 10 DAI right now, but it's 10 DAI for women and it's 70 DAI for men, basically, or something like that. So like there's a higher barrier to entry. And because of the projects that they're doing and the people who are involved with it, like there are still really interesting men who want to be involved in the project and involved in the conversation. And I think that's kind of nice. But I think, I think you're right.
I mean, again, for me, like, as a Dane, I'm highly biased, right? Because I come from like a culture where inherently there's trust by default and we're all equal, to the point where if I go on a date and I get we get a bill, we split it by default, because if I don't split it, I would imply that she's not independent and she can't finance herself. And I would, and by splitting it, I'm actually implying that she's independent and she can finance herself. So I really don't get the whole like, inequality with also the money part. Like men has to pay 70 DAI.
Well, the reason they do that is because I mean, and like that's just a mechanism we could explore. The reason that they did that.
I'm like,
oh man,
so,
Niklas,
Niklas,
I can totally understand you, and I'll tell you why. My son is 24 and he spent 3 years in Denmark. Okay, he did his IB in Denmark, and he has a very similar view of the world. You guys are younger and you don't, and that's the hope, because you treat women more as your equal. Okay, yes. But you also have to look at the fact that when it comes to business is dominated by older men than you, who have a different mentality and a different view on how things work and who should get what and what should happen. And I'm not generalizing to all men. I said there are some, okay? So that's where the difficulty comes, I mean, and that's why sometimes, women of my age felt it more, let's say, than men and women of your age, and it depends a lot, and it matters the cultural background, what country you were born in, raised in, how things happen in your particular, culture or geographical area. But unfortunately, if you look at it overall across the world, Denmark is a beautiful place. I've been there. It will be great if it would be like that everywhere, but it's not.
I understand, and I know that as well.
And there's like some things, and Bridget could speak better to this than maybe I could, but there are some things that like behaviorally women tend to do more than men that make it difficult when negotiating for things or applying for positions. There's just like certain things that you can see in the research. If you want an app, I mean, it's based in the UK, but if you want to read something that's pretty interesting, on Twitter, I think a couple days ago for International Women's Day, there was this bot.
I follow it. Yep.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
The gender gap.
The gender pay gap, yeah.
The gender pay gap bot.
So
all right, ladies, I'm sorry to jump in, but unfortunately we're about 20 minutes over, so we're running a little bit for our next one.
But I want to know what you say.
We'll send it to you.
I was just going to say, so there are a lot of organizations who've done a lot of hard work to make gender parity, and yet still have gender disparity. And so the gender pay gap out was actually pretty surprising to see companies that I thought were doing a really great job. And we're talking about the great job that they were doing, and then seeing the actual statistics of how, men are paid in some cases like 30 or 40 or 50% more than women on, not on average, but the median, which I think is interesting. But these are conversations where they're quite uncomfortable to have in many cases, in my experience, and they're uncomfortable to have within different types of groups. And what I like about the bigger pies is that it's at least one space where you can have it, where it's a safe space for like women and femme presenting people. I can also absolutely see, because part of what we talked about was diversity and inclusion beyond gender, although I would call it a bigger problem since only 5% of NFTs that have been purchased were made by women. I think the bigger pie can also like stop focusing just so much on gender, but can focus on diversity and inclusion more broadly. But this feels like the great place to start. Does the rest of the community agree with me? I don't know, but it's certainly.
I feel you guys.
One thing I want to make clear. So the bigger pie and this women community, it's not about excluding men. It's not about bashing men up or anything like that. It's actually about empowering women, trying to get them at parity, trying to get them open to the same opportunities, trying to open doors for them towards, whether it's speaking at events, whether it's being part of boards, whether it's advising, whether it is, getting a job or something or the other, or getting training. And that's all this is all about.
I mean, I might be a little bit, I completely get it. And I think it's needed. We need more in, and it's about motivating women, and they should not feel intimidated in the space and all of this. But to be honest, like what I have seen thus far is that women can fare in this space. They have a lot of opportunities that I, as a man, have a harder time getting as of this moment. So there's both like the pros and the cons, and it's about, leveraging what there is, and like to the point where we can all become equal, because it will happen eventually. We'll have like balance. I believe in that. And then it's about, inclusive. I understand, focus on the femininity and the woman at the moment, so we can bring them up to like speed, you can say, and the men need to understand, the dynamic and all of this. Don't be all dominating about it. But in the end, it's like, for me, it's about equality and inclusive of both sexes.
100%, but Nick, at the current rate, it's going to take 256 years. So if in my lifetime we get to the point of equality, I will die incredibly happy. But the reality is, women in VC, the amount of VC funding that went to women was 3% pre-pandemic, it's now 2%. We are not going forwards at all. So yes, the Nordics are doing fantastically well, but unfortunately the rest of the world hasn't caught up yet. But yes,
we're trying to put it out, the values from there.
So Charlotte, what are our next steps then?
So I guess I would imagine we would put together a proposal, correct?
Yeah.
And so we'll share that proposal with the Bigger Pie DAO community. Or we can also come to, if you do another community call, we can also share that proposal over that time.
Okay, perfect. And do you know how long it will be before that proposal comes?
Probably about 2 weeks, if that would be all right.
So we can do some more community calls in between time. People can have a chance to read up on this. I can do some more work on that document that I quickly went through, and we can start to organize ourselves internally. Does that sound good to everyone else on the call?
Yeah, Bridget, I just wanted to say something. Looking at your list that you went through, I can see some of them, the benefits of having a DAO for some of them. For some of them, I actually see them more as a
non-DAO. Yeah, and that's great.
If you wish, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm not asking for everything to be a DAO. I'm just asking, and that's the whole point of this call, is like, what are we doing?
And for me, ultimately, you started the Bigger Pie, and you have to, I think that's something that you have to answer first to yourself, and then to maybe put it out there. Why a DAO? because if you don't know why a DAO and what does a DAO bring you more than establishing a limited company would, or something like that, then, you know, so why a DAO?
Okay. I'll add that. Yeah, well, as I said, that these are all the things I
Right,
want.
unfortunately, we really have to go.
I know.
We're super late, but it's
and
been
also,
really
Mike,
great.
thank you so much.
And thank you all, and super
Nick,
nice to meet you. And this is gonna be good. So
thanks, darling.
see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Cheers.